guys? Welcome to this episode of coil building for beginners. In this episode, I'm going to talk strictly about what you actually need to start building coils. What's the right way to build? What's the right wire? There is no right or wrong. It's your preference. Hold on. Alright guys, I'm assuming if you're watching this video that you're probably new to vaping and you may have gotten your first RDTA and you'd like to start getting into building coils. That, or you've already started but you'd like to get some more information. I'm going to try to cover as much information as possible, and I'm giving you this information as my learned experiences, right? The lessons that I've learned from building coils. I learned through YouTube videos from like Squid Dude and Twisted Messes, and they all have great tutorials, but I wanted to do a strictly beginner series, what I wish YouTube had when I first started. Episode 1 is going to be all about the tools and equipment and what you actually need to start building coils. I'm going to touch a little bit on the bits versus screwdrivers kind of thing, what you're going to need to start wrapping coils. There's also coil jigs that you can use, which are really handy. In the beginning, all you have to do is kind of spin and it'll spin it for you. That's not how I make my coils. With the coil jig, you don't have that feel, and you can't, like some coils like frame staples, when I wrap them I kind of pull the wire at an angle to get the ribbon to lay flat. You can't do that with a jig, so I've just never gotten into them. I use a bunch of different bits. Use what you have available. Necessity is the father of invention, right? So here's my 3.5 millimeter bit, and I just have some tape wrapped around the end so it doesn't cut into my hand. This is a 3 millimeter, this is a 3 millimeter. You have sets like this where there's a bunch of these in this set. There's this kind that you can get at like Harbor Freight or Home Depot. Really any size miniature like precision tool sets will be fine. You can pick up a DeWalt drill bit kit. They're handy to have the actual drill bits for using, and you can use the bits, the 1/8 and everything for building coils. Whatever you want to do, whatever's, you know, if you're on a budget, whatever the cheapest option is. I recommend starting with like a 2.5 millimeter, a 3, and a 3.5. You don't really need to go outside of that. So we're talking about diameter, which is point A to point B, the length from one side to the other. This is a 3 millimeter bit that I wrap this coil on. So it's got a 3 millimeter inner diameter. That matters because the bigger your inner diameter is, the bigger the bit that you wrap your coil on, that's going to raise your ohms. There's more wire traveling a greater distance, which puts the ohms up. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a 5 wrap alien on a 3 millimeter bit. This is going to ohm at 0.15. If I add another wrap on the 3 millimeter bit, so if I make it a 6 wrap on a 3 millimeter bit, it's going to come out to about 0.17. So adding more length, that's more distance for it to travel, the higher it's going to ohm, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive, and it took me a little while in the beginning to kind of figure this out. So the less wraps and the less distance, the quicker the electricity current's going to flow through the coil, right? So if there's only 2 wraps, it only has 2 little wraps to go through before it completes the circuit from the positive to the negative post. So more wraps equals higher resistance, less wraps equals less resistance. Also, the smaller the inner diameter, the lower the resistance is going to be. So if I have 5 wraps of the same coil on a 2.5 instead of a 3, it's going to ohm around 0.12. Same amount of wraps, just different inner diameter. The smaller diameter is going to shorten how much wire is here. Less wire, the hotter it's going to get, the faster it will travel. I hope that makes sense. So there's diameter, right, and how many wraps. Let's talk about the thickness of different wires. So if you have a 26 gauge, right, that's really thin, In a 22 gauge, it's a lot thicker than the 26. The thicker wire is going to be bigger around than the 26. We'll say the 26 is this big. Now, think of it like water flowing through a pipe, right? The electricity is water and the wire is pipe. Water is going to move a lot faster through the bigger pipe. It's going to be harder to push through the smaller pipe. It's going to move faster and there's going to be more of it that can move through the bigger pipe. So with electricity and your different gauge wires, 26 is going to ohm higher than 22 gauge is. 22 gauge is going to ohm lower. If you have a 32 gauge, that's obviously, it's going to be harder for the electricity to flow through that wire than it is on an 18 gauge wire, which is really big. So there's a lot of space, a lot of metal there for the electricity to flow through fast. And again, the faster it can move over a shorter distance, the hotter it's going to be, the lower the resistance is, right? The less resistance electricity has from point A to point B, faster it's going to move, which means it's going to be hotter and the resistance will be lower. Resistance is measured in ohms. This coil measures at 0.15 ohms, which is low. The closer to 0, the hotter it's going to be. What's the right way to build? What's the right wire? There is no right or wrong. It's your preference. So if you like a really hot vape that heats up real quick and you get clouds instantaneously from your RDTA, you're not going to build with 26 gauge. You can, but you're going to need like 2 wraps and it's just not practical. So you're going to want something like a 24 that will allow you to build at a lower ohm easily. The difference between wires. There's a lot of options out there. There's Kanthal, there's nichrome, there's stainless steel, titanium, nickel. What do I recommend? Well, I've never really used the titanium and the nickel. I've used stainless steel a handful of times, but I build and use nichrome and Kanthal. And a lot of people really like nichrome, especially the cloud chasers, because it gets hotter faster than the Kanthal does. Kanthal has about 2 times the life that nichrome does. So it heats up a little slower, lasts a little longer. What's right for you? It depends on your build preference. It really does. If you're targeting, say, 1.5 ohms, you can reach that with 3 26 gauge cores, 5 wraps on a 3mm, or you could do it with 24 gauge parallel, so 2 of them wrapped 5 times on a 3mm, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's preference. Really, the way to find what you like is trying different kinds. I'm going to put links in the description for some starter kits on eBay of wire, where it gives you like a whole bunch of different kinds. I think there's a couple different options, but it'll be like 36 up to 22 and 100-foot spools, which is perfect for getting started, and that's exactly what I ordered when I started. So after you play around, right, building is just a lot of trial and error, but you want to be safe, so don't build lower than 0.08, and do your research. Do your research. Don't be careless. Hopefully I'm going to address a lot of what you're going to need to know through this series, but just please be careful, okay? We don't want you to be the next idiot on the news lying about why your vape pen exploded. You're responsible for your own safety, nobody else. Do your research. Be safe. Very few tools when you're building that you really want like the best, and the one that comes to mind for me is your pair of flush cuts. Get the best pair that you can afford. I've gone through so many different pairs trying to save money before I ended up, actually, you know what, these are like $4 at Harbor Freight, and these are great. Actually, there's another pair, I'll put the link in the description box to a pair that I love on eBay. Build with a set of swivels. I have a video on how I built this little block. I'll put the link up right up there. It's like a tabletop clamp. I got it for a few dollars and it serves its purpose beautifully. These are just little pieces of a 2x4 cut and drilled and wood glued together. And I have some swivels. You only need about 3 of them, but if you need the length, you can hook more, but you don't need any more than 3. Again, I'll put the link in the description where you can find ball bearing swivels. Not the normal fishing swivels that you find at Walmart, ball bearing swivels. So there's your swivel setup. Then I have a C-clamp, so I just clamp it down to the end of my table and it doesn't go anywhere. I like putting a lot of tension on my drill and I move it around when I'm building, so the C-clamp keeps everything intact for me. Alright, so let's talk drills. You can either do a corded or a cordless. I have a vise set up, right? This is like a table vise, and I have my drill mounted into the vise. This is the perfect height for me, and of course it's parallel and pretty much level with my swivels. This setup just works really well for my build style. And the corded drill, you can find one really cheap at Walmart, I think for like 30 bucks. There's a couple on eBay for really cheap that I recommend. Again, link in the description. If you have a cordless drill, you know, with the batteries, you could stand that right up on your table and build your swivel thing to match up the height. Now let's talk about pliers. Again, it's really what works best for you. I end up using these angled pliers a lot. I have a couple of needle nose toothless pliers. I highly recommend getting two. You know, when you're building your fuse Claptons and they twist on you, it's nice to be able to grab and twist and get the twists out. Doesn't matter what kind you get as long as they're toothless pliers. Here's an example of the more you invest right now, the easier and better your life's going to be. I went through a lot of crappy pairs of toothless pliers before I found these ones that I like. Again, link to quality toothless pliers will be in the description. I have two pairs of nylon pliers, nylon tips. The whole point of the nylon pliers is to not damage the wire as you're getting the kinks out. I don't use these a lot. The toothless pliers, if you're gentle and careful work, you don't need to go running and buying these. Those are the basics. That's what you need to start building coils. Now, to install the coils, you can use that COIL Master jig thing to wrap them. You don't need it. You're going to need a pair of ceramic tip tweezers. These are really handy for pinching and pulsing when you're getting them to glow evenly after you install them. And they're just like really easy to mess with the cotton and stuff. And if you've got that precision screwdriver set, you can use the little itty bitty screwdrivers to, you know, finagle your cotton. Got it. The other thing you're going to need when installing your coils, more so when you're wicking your coils, is a really nice sharp pair of scissors. Definitely get a decent pair of scissors because chomping at that cotton is a pain in the butt. So do yourself a favor, get yourself a decent pair of scissors. That'll make quick work of cutting the cotton. So that's what you need. That's it. Everything else is just frills. Just start with the basics, and if you find, you know, oh, hey, that might really work well for me and that might, you know, speed up my process, you can always go and pick up stuff later. You don't need it right now. Start with the basics. Alright guys, so we covered inner diameter, resistance a little bit, different kinds of wire, and the tools that you're going to need to get started. So I think I'm going to wrap up this episode and leave that there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was informative, and I hope that I didn't forget anything. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments, and I will do my absolute best to help you guys out and answer any questions that you have. If you want to see me do live builds and some pictures of my builds and stuff, check me out on Instagram at Sherlock_Holmes, which is HOHMS. If you like this video, guys, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more awesome content, press that bell button, and you'll be notified when I upload more stuff. Thanks again so much for watching, guys. I'm Sherlock Holmes, and I'll see you in the next video.